managed to report a good set of earnings. So let's get the discussion going with the management. Ms. Vinita Gupta, who's the CEO, Mr. Nilesh Gupta, the MD, as well as Ramesh Swaminathan, who's the ED and CFO, are joining us on the show now. Thank you so much for making time and speaking with ET now. Vinita, let me start with you and talk about the US sales, because in Q4 we saw a good performance come by. But what's the outlook going forward? What's the situation on ground when it comes to the US sales?
Fiscal year 23, we have worked hard to improve the US margins quarter after quarter, including portfolio rationalization, optimization efforts, and that has yielded results, as you can see. As we go into the new fiscal year with the new product launches that we are planned with Spiriva, with Darunavir launching in June, as well as other product launches, we expect to grow the US business, hopefully double digit. On the inline, the baseline products, we've seen pricing erosion stabilize, after a couple of years of significant price pressures. So we are starting to see some stability in the inline business. So combination of margin improvement, stabilization of the inline business, plus the new product launches, we're very optimistic that fiscal year 24 is going to be a strong year for the US.
Yeah, that's very encouraging to know. High double-digit growth in US and easing pricing pressures. That will make a lot of shareholders of yours quite excited. Tell us about what's the status on Spiriva approval. Everyone has been waiting on the street to hear more on that.
Yes, we are close at this point with the approval. We've had a couple of communications with the agency to clarify things, and believe that by next quarter we should be in a position to get approved and launched.
Vanita, just to clarify, by next quarter you mean Q2, right? And just to get a better understanding, the early part of the second quarter or the fag end?
We believe it should be early Q2.
Let me come to you now. Talk to us why your operating other income came in slightly higher this time, and should we treat it just as a one-off this quarter?
No, this is actually income coming in from the PLI schemes announced by the government. As you recognize, this is highly sustainable, so it's not really in one-off and will continue in the quarters to come as well. Aggregated for the previous quarters as well. So to that extent, the total quantum might be on the little higher side, but the income per se is of course sustainable over time.
Let me bring you into the conversation as well. The India portfolio growth has been a bit subpar. What's the strategy to get the growth back on track here?
So progressively through the quarters, we've seen the growth as per IQVIA, right? So the first 2-3 quarters were very, very low. So our growth was 1%, 6%, 7.5%. And now we're back to double-digit growth with 11.3% in the quarter. If you adjust the diabetes portfolio, our growth is pretty much at the market growth rate. So 15.2% versus the market at 15.5%. And as you know, our main pain point has been diabetes, where we've seen loss of exclusivity on certain products. We've seen genericization across certain products as well, which has led to, this pressure on growth. But overall, I think we're back to growth. Strong double-digit growth is what I would expect. If you look at, respiratory, if you look at cardiac, if you look at newer areas like GI, if you look at even CNS, you see strong growth across the board. And that's something that we would expect to continue through the quarters now. So double-digit growth is what we would expect to be back to. So again, the two big parts, I think the US stabilizing, which I think is largely done. India getting back to double-digit growth, that seems to be in place as well. So with that, we would hope for, continuing this growth momentum that we've now built.
The outlook for margin trajectory and cost optimization plans from your side.
We have been working on, in fact, several initiatives across various lines for the last several quarters. Actually, I'm very happy to say that it has actually paid dividends over the last few quarters and the quarter as well. Particularly if we talk about issues like returns, and air freight and so on, these have been captured along the gross margins line. But unfortunately, because of secular inflation that has plagued everybody, it is actually around 5% for us. In some ways, the gains have been kind of camouflaged in the overall result itself. If you look at, for example, the manpower cost, it has grown by only 3% for the entire year. It is obviously because of the fact that we went about rationalizing the workforce across several functions, including manufacturing, R&D, and the like. There are, of course, other heads that we've been working on. There has been progress on the idle time, but we also lost volumes. We are also working on, in fact, other initiatives on inventory write-offs and the like. But in some ways, these would also be kind of offset by the need to actually invest in areas in India, especially when it comes to feet on the ground, sales and promotion expenses, and other areas in terms of businesses that we have got into. So you would expect, in fact, the margins to progress in line with, in fact, movement on the top line because of newer products coming in America and looking at, in fact, expansion of products like Foster, Namaskar, and the like in Europe. And of course, as we unfold, in fact, our complex injectables pipeline and inhalations, obviously top line will grow. And of course, the initiatives on the cost reduction front, it will continue. So you would expect successive increase in EBITDA margin profile over the next several quarters going forward.
Okay, so that's the optimistic commentary coming as far as the margin expansion is concerned. But Vinita, what about the pricing of Albuterol? Because Lupin's positioning on the same was something that the street wanted to know more about. Your take?
The market position is pretty stable on Albuterol. We've been at 20% plus share of the generic market, and that continues. Pricing also has been fairly stable. I mean, we've had the market has not changed in any material manner in terms of the competitive dynamics in Albuterol. So it's been a fairly stable product.
Nilesh, your API business has seen a very good growth in Q4. In fact, that's pretty much the trend across the sector. Talk to us about your own business, this part of the business. Is this recovery sustainable? API overall has bounced back after several tepid quarters in the past.
So the API business was, very tepid in the earlier quarters, right? It really is a bounce back that I see, and it's driven by the core products like Cefaclor, 7-ACCA, cephalosporin APIs primarily. And we would expect it to continue at this level. We don't expect this kind of growth to continue, but we would expect it to continue at this kind of level. I think there's some good growth drivers in the API and what we call the API plus business, which is the global institution part as well. So it's going to be a good year for that team. But we would see API growing through the year as well. But obviously larger growth on the institution side, both for the ARVs as well as for TB products.
Okay, thank you, Vinita, Ramesh, as well as Nilesh for joining us and talking to us about the earnings of Lupin and the outlook going forward. We'll let you go on that note.